Hi everyone, this is Andrew from A World of Circus Photo Contest. I'm going to show you how to use the software called CaptureOne. CaptureOne, to my experience, most commonly is used by creating something called a session. A session is a folder that within it has several subfolders where various files are stored. So the first folder we're going to look at is the capture folder. Capture is where your raw file photo/capture is stored. In that folder there'll be a raw file, and if you make changes in CaptureOne, it will track the changes you make in a settings file. The raw file will be left untouched. It'll just be a settings file that's changed and associated with the raw file. Second folder is a selects folder. To me, that's irrelevant because I don't use it very often. Some people may enjoy putting certain special selects into that folder. It breaks my personal workflow, so I don't use it. Output is where the TIFFs and JPEGs go to be processed. So if you say, take this raw file and make it a TIFF, it goes into the output folder. The trash is just where if you don't like a raw file, it goes there. I'm going to tell this software to go store the file into this EIP session folder that I've created on my desktop. And I'm going to give it the name Von Wong Test 2, and because this is my second test. I'm going to click OK, and this new session opens up. It's basically the software, and on the top left we have this highlighted folder. Here we'll see our session folders are the capture folder I mentioned, the selects folder, which is called irrelevant now elsewhere, the output folder where TIFFs will go, and the trash folder. Now I'm going to go find the raw file that I want to use in this session. I have this file right here. Now I've prepared this file for a good example for you. I'm going to move it into my session folder. So I've taken a raw file, put it into my capture folder, and we have, this is the original, and this is the final edit. And I want to show you how I went from point A to point B. So you're aware this is one file with two different sets of settings. I can close this or expand this as I see fit. And what it is if I click on the file, I can go, let's make a new variant. It will create a new variant setting that's attached to the original raw file, and I can make this black and white, bump up the contrast, brighten it, darken it, do whatever I want. It doesn't really matter, it's just there. So this is one file with two settings, and I want to show you how this works. We have a .eip file, which in actuality is an IIQ file, a .iiq, compressed and zipped up into an enhanced image packet, thus the .eip. It basically takes the settings, it takes the raw files, saves them together, but doesn't make it permanent. It's still just separate files zipped up together. I can actually control click and go unpack EIP, and it reverts to a .iiq file. So I'm going to show you where this file is and what it looks like now that I've unpacked it. We are in the Von Wong Test 2 file. We have the capture folder, where if I go in here, I'll see this .iiq file. It hasn't been modified. We actually look under the CaptureOne folder and the settings folder, and this here is where the variations of the file are stored, where the settings have been changed and everything. It's all saved in this like 12 kilobyte file. So our file will never change from 37 megabytes, only this one will. So I'm going to go to this file and I'm going to create a new variant. I'm going to go contrast, saturation, doesn't really matter what I do. I'm just messing with it for now to show you that when I go back here, this is changed to 16 kilobytes. This isn't changed at all. So it's only the settings file that's being changed and associated with the raw file, because we never want to permanently harm our raw file. So going back to this, I'm going to delete this, pack this as an EIP, just because that's where I started. I'm going to show you CaptureOne. So CaptureOne stores its tools, and it's totally customizable, but this is the default setting. Up here we have rotation tools, we have moving tools, deleting tools. You can reset all your adjustments to where it started. I'm going to undo that. We have a arrow tool, a move tool, so that if we zoom in, and everyone usually knows that you can grab with the hand and shift around. A loop tool, a crop tool, a straightening tool, which if I go back here is one of the things I used. I grabbed and drew a line. There we go. We have vignetting and various other things that we can access. Here, I can actually copy these adjustments with the up arrow, and the down arrow will paste the adjustments onto this image. It's a very short way of like affecting like 100 photos with one type of enhancement. It's very time saving. Print button and a process button. Down here we have your folder structures. It shows where we're working at. I can also browse the rest of my desktop. I can actually search all my files based on how I've highlighted them. I can give every image a 2 to 5 star, various color markings just to kind of highlight it. So if I'm dealing with large batches of images, I can just say these are all the ones I like. I've given 5 stars. These are all the green ones that are finals, and then start processing from there. Second, we have this, which is part of tethering your camera, where you shoot and the image appears in the software while you're shooting. Here is the white balance, which we're going to start off with enhancing to very warm. We have some other advanced black and white color editing things that you can learn on your own. I'm going to move on to this tab here, where we can control contrast, saturation. We can recover some of the highlights. We can recover the shadows. You can play with levels and curves like you do in Photoshop. Down here I'm going to show you the clarity tool, which can be used for positive or negative clarity on your image. There's also 3 types you can do: classic, neutral, and punch. We have, of course, this vignette lens based tool where we can add vignette or remove vignette that's naturally available in some wide angle lenses. I'm going to remove some in this one for the example. Distortion will take any kind of bending that the lens does and try to straighten it. Now you'll see we have a perfectly straight line in the middle. There's a crop tool, a sharpening tool. I'll enhance sharpness a bit. You can do noise reduction. Software is very good at that. We're going to skip ahead to the process tool, which is what you're going to be working with in the future. When you're done with your file and your adjustments, you're going to have a number of recipes, process recipes. And in this case, you're going to look at what the recipe is, how you're going to cook your file and make it into something else like a TIFF. Here I've got the settings of TIFF, 8-bit. It's an LZW compression to make it smaller, Adobe RGB color space, 300 resolution, 100% scale. I'm prepared to make this into a TIFF, but I don't really want to go through Photoshop for all my files and make them into JPEG. So I'm going to make a new recipe. I'm going to call it random JPEG. And what happens is I now have to change the settings, because the name doesn't really make it a JPEG. I actually have to change the settings. So it's a JPEG, 100% quality. You're going to make it an sRGB color space. I want to change the scale so that the longest edge is measured in pixels, and that it will be, you know what, 1500 pixels is pretty good. So this will now become that type of JPEG. I have both of these recipes checked off in the upper left. When I click process, it will take the time, and I'll go to this third one here where it shows me the status bar, and it will be making a TIFF and a JPEG. So I'm going to go back to this folder where we are in Von Wong Test 2. We're going to open the output folder, and there will now be a TIFF and a JPEG, and they're ready to be worked on in Photoshop or submitted to any kind of client or contest that you want.